The coffee machine at the firm hissed like it was exhaling another exhausted morning. I stood there waiting for it to fill my paper cup, half awake, already thinking about deadlines. When I looked up, he was there, tall, distracted, sleeves rolled to the elbows, tie crooked like he'd lost a quiet argument with himself. He smiled when our eyes met, one of those hesitant smiles people give when they're new and trying not to seem too eager. "First week?" I asked. "Is it that obvious?" he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Only a little. You look like you still believe the coffee here can fix things." He laughed, the sound low and unguarded. That was how it started. No thunderclap, no cinematic slow motion, just two people sharing burnt coffee and half a joke before 8 a.m. His name was Ethan Ward, the new project designer from Portland. I learned this 15 minutes later in a meeting where he sat across the table, flipping a pen through his fingers while the director talked about client expectations. I tried not to notice how calm he looked, how every time he leaned forward, the light caught in his hair. I told myself it was curiosity. That was all. I noticed her before she spoke. The way she stood a little apart from the others, arms crossed, watching the room like someone who's seen every mistake twice. She had dark eyes, focused but kind, and a quiet voice that somehow carried farther than anyone else's. Maya Rahman, senior architect, the person everyone seemed to respect without question. That morning, when she joked about the coffee, I remember thinking how natural it felt to talk to her. No small talk awkwardness, no forced laughter, just a rhythm that appeared out of nowhere. By the second day, I was looking for excuses to ask her things I could have Googled. What's the protocol for revisions? Do you know the client preferences? Where's the best place for lunch around here? She always answered directly, never indulgent. But every reply came with a flicker of amusement, as if she knew exactly what I was doing and didn't mind. A week later, we were assigned to the same community center project. The city wanted something that felt hopeful, a word that meant everything and nothing at once. Ethan's first draft was ambitious, a lot of glass, open atriums, wide staircases, beautiful but naive. "You're designing for architects," I told him, leaning over the blueprint spread across his desk, "not for the people who'll actually use it." "And who are they?" "Kids with nowhere to go after school, parents who work 2 jobs, the kind of people who need walls that feel safe, not impressive." He studied the drawing again, then nodded slowly. "You're right. Show me what that looks like." I did. That night, we stayed 2 hours past closing, moving lines, softening edges, changing glass to brick. It was the first time in months I forgot to check the clock. When we finally walked out, the city lights were fading to blue. He offered to walk me to my car. I said yes, and that simple word felt like the start of something I couldn't yet name. She was nothing like the people I'd worked with before. No pretense, no need to impress. When she focused on the model, she'd tuck a strand of hair behind her ear and go silent for minutes, completely inside the work. That night on the street, rain had just stopped. The pavement shimmered like metal. We didn't talk much, just small things about movies, her favorite bakery, my move from Portland. But when we reached her car, she paused before unlocking the door. "Thanks for the walk," she said. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." Then she smiled, soft but tired, and I knew I'd think about that smile longer than I should. In the following weeks, our friendship built itself quietly, like a structure no one planned. We started eating lunch together in the courtyard, sketching ideas on napkins, sometimes arguing about design philosophies just to hear each other defend them. He had this habit of staring out windows when he thought. "Every building," he said once, "should have at least one place that feels like breathing." I remember laughing. "That's poetic, Mr. Ward." "Everything's poetic until the deadline," he said. I pretended to roll my eyes, but truthfully, I was beginning to like how his mind worked, how he could make steel and glass sound human. The first time I realized I was in trouble was during a client meeting. Maya was presenting the updated design, calm and sure, her laser pointer tracing lines I'd drawn. And I found myself watching her lips form words I couldn't hear, lost somewhere between admiration and something riskier. Afterward, in the elevator, I said, "You make people believe in what they can't see." She looked at me, puzzled. "That's the job." "No," I said quietly. "That's you." The doors opened before she could respond. We stepped out, neither of us speaking again that day. But that night, I dreamed of her laughing at something I said. And in the dream, it felt like home. There's a danger in comfort. You stop noticing when it becomes dependence. Ethan and I started finishing each other's sentences, anticipating each other's sketches, sharing playlists on long nights. The others joked that we were the dream team. We laughed along, careful to keep the joke harmless. One Friday, the office held a small after-hours celebration for a project milestone. There was cheap champagne, louder music than usual, and everyone loosening ties. I don't drink much, but I did that night, just enough to blur the edges. Ethan sat beside me, his knee brushing mine. It was an accident probably, but I didn't move. The contact sent a quiet pulse through me. When I looked up, he was already watching me. That moment, brief, ordinary, maybe invisible to everyone else, was when the line between friendship and something else began to dissolve. I told myself I wasn't crossing any line, not yet. But I started noticing small things, the scent of her perfume when she passed by, the sound of her laughter from another room. I'd open my phone to text someone and end up typing her name instead. One evening, she left her scarf on her chair. Without thinking, I picked it up, the smell of rain and paper. I kept it in my drawer overnight, intending to return it the next morning. When I handed it back, she smiled faintly. "You could have just left it on my desk." "I thought it deserved better company," I said before I could stop myself. She shook her head, but her eyes softened. "You should be careful with words like that." "I am." Neither of us looked away. The night of the deadline, we stayed until nearly midnight. The building was silent except for the sound of keyboards and the hum of the copier. At one point, the power flickered and everything went dark. We laughed, a tired, delirious laugh, and ended up sitting on the floor with takeout containers between us. "Do you ever feel like you're living the same day over and over?" he asked. "All the time," I said, "but lately, it doesn't bother me as much." He looked at me then, serious, almost vulnerable. "Because of me?" I could have lied, but I didn't. Maybe. The lights came back before either of us moved, but in that brief darkness, I felt something shift, a current too strong to ignore. By the end of that project, everyone was exhausted but proud. We celebrated at a rooftop bar downtown. I told myself I'd go for an hour, have one drink, then leave. Ethan found me by the railing, wind tugging at his shirt. "To surviving," he said, holding up his glass. "To surviving," I echoed. We talked about everything: music, cities, the way some people never outgrow their first heartbreak. The night stretched out, the crowd thinned, and before I knew it, we were alone. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. It was a small, gentle gesture, but it carried years of meaning we hadn't yet lived. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. I didn't. And that was how the affair began. Not with passion or rebellion, but with quiet inevitability, like two rivers finally meeting after years of running parallel. The morning after that rooftop night, I woke up with her scent still caught in my shirt. Not perfume exactly, something softer, like paper and warmth. I told myself it was nothing, a mistake, a line crossed in a moment that didn't mean what I wanted it to mean, but I couldn't stop replaying it. The wind, the sound of her laughter fading into silence, the second before she didn't pull away. When I walked into the office, she was already there, leaning over a model, hair pinned up, pretending to read the plans. She didn't look at me. Not once. It should have ended there. But every time I saw her, my chest tightened with the memory of that moment, the almost. A week later, the firm sent us to San Francisco for a client presentation. 2 days, 1 hotel, 100 reasons to stay professional. The first night, after dinner, she said she wanted to walk by the bay to clear her head. I offered to join. She hesitated, just long enough for me to notice, then nodded. The air smelled like salt and rain. We walked without talking, footsteps echoing on the pier. "You've been quiet lately?" I said finally. "I'm trying to be," she replied. "Because of me?" She stopped walking. "Ethan, don't start." "I'm not starting anything." "Yes, you are," she said, turning to face me. "You're starting something we can't finish." I looked at her for a long time. "Then tell me to stop." She didn't. And that silence, that single breath between fear and want, changed everything. When he kissed me, it didn't feel like something that was happening for the first time. It felt like something that had been waiting quietly for years. The city blurred around us. Somewhere nearby, a fairy horn echoed. His hands were gentle, uncertain, like he was afraid to prove what we both already knew. I should have pulled away. I should have said, "This isn't us." Instead, I whispered, "You shouldn't have done that." He smiled faintly. "I know." And then he kissed me again. That night, we didn't go back to our rooms right away. We walked until the streets emptied, until the sky turned pale. Every word we said felt stolen, as if someone might come take them back. The next morning, I woke up alone, sunlight on the hotel sheets, heart pounding like a secret I could never tell. At the presentation, we acted normal, professional, polite. But the air between us had changed. Every glance was heavier. Every word had a shadow behind it. On the flight home, we sat in separate rows. I watched the back of his head for most of the trip, wondering if guilt always felt this much like longing. For the next few weeks, we tried to pretend it hadn't happened. But pretending is exhausting. It doesn't erase what you feel. It just forces you to carry it in silence. One evening, she came by my desk to drop off some plans. Our hands brushed. The contact lasted half a second, but it was enough. I caught her wrist gently. Maya, don't, she said softly. Don't what? Don't make me want to stay. But she didn't move. I stood up, close enough to smell her perfume. The whole office was empty by then. My voice came out barely above a whisper. Do you ever think about that night? Her eyes flicked to mine. Every day. That was all it took. By the time the city outside went dark, we were at my apartment. The rain started just as she closed the door behind her. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. Every look, every touch felt like confession and surrender all at once. When she finally fell asleep beside me, I watched her breathe and knew my life had just divided in two, before her and after. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen moments. Lunches that lasted too long, texts sent from bathroom stalls, weekends that vanished like dreams. We told ourselves it wasn't wrong because no one was being hurt. But deep down, we knew what we were doing would eventually ask for payment. Love like this always does. Sometimes I'd wake up next to him and think, how did we get here? He'd reach for me in his sleep, whisper my name like it was both prayer and apology. But then morning would come and the world would pull us apart again. We became experts at lying. Not big lies, but the quiet, everyday kind. Working late. Team dinner. Client call. Lies that sounded harmless because they almost were. Almost. One night, as we drove back from a weekend in a small lakeside town, he said, "Do you ever wish we could tell people?" I smiled at the windshield. And what would we say? That we fell in love by accident? Maybe we did. No one believes in accidents that last this long. He reached for my hand, and I let him. The road stretched out ahead, endless and dark. It's strange how quickly you can build a life inside a secret. Ours had rules. No calls before 8 a.m., no messages after midnight. Never use the same place twice. We didn't talk about the future, not because we didn't want one, but because the present was fragile enough. Every time I saw her, I thought about what would happen if someone found out, if one wrong text, one curious glance, one unlucky moment broke the world we'd built. But love makes you believe in your own invincibility. One Friday night, I asked her to come by my apartment. We ordered Thai food, watched an old black and white movie. She fell asleep on my couch halfway through, head on my chest, hand loosely resting over my heart. I remember thinking, if this is all I ever get, it's enough. But it wasn't. Not for long. Love makes you selfish. You start wanting more of a person than they can give. I wanted mornings. I wanted to hold his hand in public, to talk about ordinary things without measuring every word. I wanted real. But real wasn't possible for us. One night, he mentioned his girlfriend, casually, like he was trying to make it sound normal. Something about her family coming into town. I smiled and said, "That's nice." He looked at me for a long moment. "You don't mean that." "No," I said quietly. "But you wanted me to." We didn't talk much after that. The air felt heavier. Later, when we made love, there was a sadness in it, a tenderness that felt like goodbye. The guilt hit me hardest in quiet moments, brushing my teeth, waiting for a light to change, hearing my girlfriend laugh at something on TV. I'd built 2 lives, and both of them were starting to crumble. Maya never asked me to choose. Maybe she knew I wouldn't. But every time I looked at her, I wanted to be the man who could. One evening, I called her and said, "Let's go somewhere. Just drive. No plans." We ended up at the edge of the city, near a half-built bridge overlooking the water. We sat on the hood of my car, passing a thermos of coffee back and forth. "I can't keep doing this," she said finally. "I know." She turned to me, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "Then why can't we stop?" I didn't have an answer. We stayed there until dawn, not touching, not speaking, just two people watching the sky turn gold, realizing they were already too far gone. I tried to end it once. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special. I waited until the office emptied, then walked to his desk. "We can't keep this going," I said. He looked up slowly. "What changed?" "Nothing," I said. "That's the problem." He nodded. "If that's what you want." I left before he could see me cry. For days I avoided him. I kept my head down, came in early, left late. But one night, as I was locking up, I saw him waiting by the door. "Please," he said quietly, "just talk to me." "Ethan." "No," he said. "You don't get to walk away like it meant nothing." "I never said it meant nothing." "Then what are we doing?" I hesitated, then whispered, "We're surviving." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his breath. "This isn't surviving, Maya. It's drowning." And still, I didn't move away. After that night, we stopped pretending. We didn't talk about ending it anymore. We didn't talk about anything that wasn't right in front of us. We were reckless, not publicly, but emotionally. Every touch felt like defiance, every look like confession. Sometimes we'd escape the city, weekends by the sea, small towns where no one knew our names. Those were the happiest days of my life. But they always ended the same way. Her packing her bag, standing by the door saying, "We can't do this forever." And every time I'd nod like I understood, but I never did. The breaking point came in winter. He was up for a major promotion, one that would mean long hours and public attention. His girlfriend, now fiancée, threw him a celebration dinner. I wasn't invited, of course, but I saw the pictures online. He looked proud. She looked radiant. The next morning he came to my apartment before dawn, still wearing last night's suit. "I didn't want you to see that," he said. "I saw it anyway. I don't want this to hurt you." "It already does." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "You made your choice, Ethan." He exhaled slowly. "It doesn't feel like one." "It is." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city outside was waking up. Cars, sirens, life going on as if ours hadn't just fallen apart. When he left, I sat by the window until the sun rose, watching the light crawl across the floor. I thought about how love can be both a gift and a punishment, and how sometimes you don't know which you're holding until it's gone. That was the last time I saw him for a long while. Our project ended. He moved to another department. I transferred to a new city 6 months later. We said nothing more. No goodbye, no closure, just silence. Heavy, final, merciful. But sometimes, even now, I'll hear a song we once played on those long drives, and for a moment, I'm back there, on a rooftop, under city lights, with the man who made everything complicated and beautiful.